get into creating an onboarding flow with Figma. So the first thing that I've done is created a brand new Figma file. Obviously I've added in a frame and some text just to get started. Just up front, I'm going to let you know that I absolutely love keyboard shortcuts, so there will be a lot of using that throughout this video. I'll try my best to tell you what they are as they go, otherwise I will fill them in later on. So the first keyboard shortcut that we're going to start off with is the letter F on the keyboard, and that is going to bring up the frame selection. On the right hand side we'll have a whole bunch of different frames. You want to open up phone to begin with, and then what we want to do is usually I go with an iPhone 8 to begin, and you're going to see a little rectangle which is called a frame drop onto your screen, and this is going to serve our first onboarding screen. So what we're going to do is zoom in a little bit, and you can just do that by pinching if you've got a trackpad, and I think control and then scroll if you've got a mouse, but don't quote me on that. So let's start off by creating a really basic sign-in screen. So when we want to sign into something new, we usually have the name of the app, a little bit of information about the app, like maybe their byline or something like that, and then a prompt to either sign in or sign up. And so that's what we want to start with. So let's start by adding the name of our brand. So I'm going to hit T on the keyboard, and that's going to bring up the text box option. We can also hit it up in the left hand side up here. So what we want to do is click and drag to size our text box. My font is ridiculously large, so I'm going to change that over here on the right hand side. Usually with a mobile design, we want to have most of our fonts being in that sort of 18 pixel range. I'm going to go with 24 because that's usually pretty good for a heading, but we'll adjust as we go through. I'm going to call my app Happy Greens, and I'm not sure what it is yet, but we'll work it out along the way. So what I'm going to do is navigate over to the right and hit this button in the text panel, or the text editing panel, and hit auto width. And what that does is it just makes the text box the exact same size as the text, so that when we do align it to the middle of the page and stuff like that, it just makes it a little bit easier and a little bit cleaner as well. So what we're going to do is select Happy Greens by clicking on it, and then if we navigate over to the right hand side, we'll see at the top of this design bar that we have different alignments that we can do to put the text into the middle of the screen. And so what I'm going to hit is this align horizontal center, so you can see that I'm using a Windows machine, and so to do that we can use Alt-H to do that as well. What's really great about Figma is that it shows you all these shortcuts as you go, because it knows that it's going to really empower you to design faster, quicker, and get whatever's in your head straight onto the paper, or the screen actually in this case. So we've got Happy Greens, that's looking great. I'm going to ctrl+c, ctrl+v, so duplicate it. Double click to select all the text, and we're going to add in that byline. So I guess this is going to be a planting type thing, so I'm going to go with bringing green friends to your doorstep. And I'm going off the screen, but not to worry, I'm going to go ctrl+A to select everything, and we want to make this text a little bit smaller. So again, navigating over to that right hand side, and maybe we want to go with 18px. Using the preset text size is always great because it helps you make sure that you're not using anything too big or too small. So I'm going to press that byline that we just created, and again center it using the center button, or remember it was Alt-H on the keyboard. And if that's still not fitting onto your screen, don't worry, we can go over to the right hand side once you've selected that text and squish it in just like I have here, and then again Alt-H on the keyboard to horizontally align it to the center. I think that's looking okay. I think it did look a little bit nicer with it being one line, so I'm going to change it back to one line and just hit auto width, and then bring it straight back to the center. Awesome. You know what? It is a little bit too long. I'm going to change it to that, and I might actually center align that text as well. So just as you would on Word or Google Docs, center align again is in that text editing panel, and we can just center align the text. So on this keyboard, it will be Ctrl+Alt+T to do that. All right, so let's start by creating those first sign in and login buttons. So to do that, we're going to add another text box. So I'm hitting T on the keyboard, clicking and dragging it across, and we are going to type in sign in. Again, we want to make that auto width so that our text box is only the size of the sign in button, which is looking great. I'm going to select this button, and what we're going to do is add an auto layout. And This is basically the equivalent of a flexbox if you're a developer, but it's a really great tool to add automatic spacing around your text box or your button and to make it consistent down the track. So what we want to do here is do shift+A, and you'll see it says auto layout added, which is awesome. And you'll have a brand new panel on the right hand side. So we can see that it says auto layout. We've got some different options for editing that, and we'll play around with them as we go. So the first thing that we're going to do is press probably stroke, and that's the little plus on the right hand side next to stroke, and that's just added an outline to our button, which is looking great. So from here, so if we click off it, we've got a button. That was really simple. So I'm going to click back into this, and usually for a primary button we want to have something that's a solid color. So we're going to actually remove this stroke by pressing the minus next to where that color is. So now we can see that's disappeared, and without pressing anything else, I'm going to hit plus on the fill, and this is going to fill in color behind it. So by default, it adds white to the background, which is totally fine, but we obviously want to add some color. So I'm going to go over to flat UI colors, which is one of my favorite places to get color selections. All right, and on here, what we want to do is select a palette where we can grab some colors. Feel free to choose whatever you like. I'm going to go with the German palette today, and maybe this gorgeous purple. I'm going to flick back to my Figma tab, and what this does is it automatically copies that color to your clipboard. So flicking back over to the Figma tab, I'm going to select my little button again and go to fill. I'm going to click on the ffffff, and what that does is it auto selects all of that because it knows you're going to paste something in or you're going to start editing that color. So I'm going to go ctrl+v and press enter, and that automatically puts purple into the background for us, which is great. Woo! Okay, so what we want to do from here is, obviously that black is a little bit hard to read on top of the purple. So what we might do is actually change that black into white. So I'm going to select that button again, and at the bottom of the right hand side panel, we can see that we've got selected colors. And so basically everything that you have selected, it's organized that into colors for you. And so you can only, so what you can do here is change that black into another color, and that will change all the black iterations for what you have selected. So be really careful with this, because if there's other things that are on a white background and are black, they will also change color. But in this case, we've just got the button, so we're all good to go. So what I'm going to do is change this to FFF, press enter, and we can see that our text has changed to white. All right, this button probably a little bit too small for me, so what we want to do is bring it out so that it spans majority of the page, makes it a little bit neater, and we know that our sign up button in this case will be the same length because it's the same number of letters, but if we were to change it to login, it would be a different number of letters, and so it would be a different width, which makes the design a little bit inconsistent and brings chaos to the page, and we want to keep it clean, nice, and feeling really organized for whatever user comes on to create an onboarding design with us. So what I'm going to do is just go over to the right hand side of our button after I've selected it, and we can see it comes up with the arrows so that I can drag it out, and I'm just going to do that. Awesome, and we can see that our text is on the left hand side. Oh no, what are we going to do? So what I'm going to do is select the button again, navigate over to the right hand side, and under auto layout, so we've got some arrows, and this is basically spacing between components. We've got spacing around components or the border, and then we've got alignment and padding, and that's what we want to press. So I'm going to press alignment and padding, and then hover over the center and press that, and that's going to align all of our content to the center of this purple box that we have created. That's looking great. Then that's what we can use for all our future buttons, and also input fields and things like that as well. So what we want to do now is duplicate that first button and create our sign up flow. So what I'm going to do is press this, ctrl+c, ctrl+v on the keyboard, and then click and drag that down, and we've created a duplicate. So now what I'm going to do is double press sign in, and that should select the text for me, and double click again, and that selected all the text inside of that. I'm going to click right arrow key and change that to up, and now we've got sign in and sign up. but they're both looking the same, so it would be really easy to make a mistake of hitting sign in instead of sign up. And if we were to change that order, it would mess up a lot of users. So what we want to do is click that sign in button. This is going to be our secondary action, because if someone new is coming to our website, we want to prompt them to sign up, whereas users that already know our app and have logged in before, they're going to be able to differentiate between sign up and sign in. Might not be the best UX out there, but I think it does the job and okay. So clicking sign in, what we're going to do is remove this fill from the background. So I'm going to click minus. It might look like it's disappeared, but I promise you it's still there. You can see the blue outline of that shape. What we want to do is add a stroke. So I'm going to click plus. I'm going to change this color to purple. So I've clicked the little black box there and I'm going to select purple. And that's looking great. And what I'm going to do is double click in the middle of this block to select that text that we put in before. And now I'm going to navigate over to the design bar again, and just underneath text we've got fill. Clicking that white box that has the color, we're going to change that to purple as well. Awesome. So now we can see that there's a clear difference between the two of them. We probably actually want sign in to be underneath. What I'm going to do is click and drag across all these components so that all of them are selected, and center align them by pressing the horizontal center align button. Obviously feel free to use the keyboard shortcut as well. I always forget that one. And awesome, that's looking great. I think we've created a really nice onboarding screen to start off with. So what we want to do now is create the next page. So let's create the sign in flow. So I'm going to press F on the keyboard. We're going to add another iPhone 8 screen. Awesome. Make sure that they're aligned together, and you'll see that when you hover this around next to the original frame that we had, there's some great grid lines in place to tell you when stuff is aligned. Definitely take advantage of that, and if it's not turned on, you might have to turn it on in the bigger cities. Okay, so from here, what we want to do is obviously when we sign in, we want to input some kind of username and usually a password as well, and so that's what we're going to be creating. So let's add some text to welcome back our user. So I'm going to write welcome back to Happy Greens. Feel free to customize this as you want. I want this text to be left aligned, so I'm going to change that in the text editing panel again, and we probably want to make sure that our text box is sized to how much text we have, but I'm okay with it being 2 lines at this stage. And we're going to bring that up to be a little bit higher in the screen, and maybe we can actually span it out. Okay, so I'm just going to go with auto width on that button again. And now what we want to do is add a text field. So to do that, I'm going to actually grab the sign in button and ctrl+c, ctrl+v, and then drag that onto our second page. That's looking great. I'm going to select it, and what I want to do is change that sign in to be left aligned. And this is going to save as our placeholder text for that text field that we're creating. So again, moving over to auto layout and then going right next to where we selected before for the center and doing left, and that's going to take our text to the left hand side. All right, we want this text to not be purple. We will maybe want it to be like a little bit off of a black on white, or white on black can be a bit intense. So we're going to choose a color that's just a little bit lighter than a black, so a really dark gray. And what I really enjoy using for that is 333. So I'm going to type that into the color and press enter. And that's just not as intense of a black. And I'll probably change the other blacks as well. So let's click and drag across all our blacks and scroll down to selection colors, and where we've got 000, which is like black, we're going to change that to 333 as well. So I'm going to click on that and 333, press enter again, and that's just a little bit nicer on the eyes. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in onto the second screen by pinching my keyboard, and what we want to do again is add probably a little bit of a description of what's going to go into this field. So I'm going to press T and create a text box, and I'm going to left align this text before I start typing. And what we're going to add in is username. So we're going to type username. Obviously this text is really big, so usually when you're going with a label, you want to have a font size that's maybe between 8 pixels and 12 pixels, depending on the device and what your design system looks like. So I'm going to change this font size to be, let's say 12. yeah, that looks like a good size. And I'm gonna also make it auto width so it doesn't look too big, and we're gonna drag it down until it just touches the top of my sign in field. And we might change the color of this again, so it's already preset to black. So I'm gonna change this to 555, which is a slightly lighter gray again than we had in the sign in. And let's type in a sample username. So might be @ and I'm just gonna use my name for this one. Awesome. So what I'm gonna do now is click and drag across those two things that we created, so the label and the field. And then I'm going to press shift+A, and that's gonna create another auto layout. And so what we can do here is navigate over to auto layout, and what we're gonna do is add in 8px of spacing just next to the arrows. You can see where I've done that in the right hand side. And that's just gonna ensure that we have nice consistent spacing for all the text fields that we create. So now what I'm gonna do is select that group and press ctrl+c, ctrl+v to duplicate and then drag down. And this is gonna be a password field. So we're gonna change username to password. So double click and then double click again. Password. And maybe let's put in a couple of stars. Awesome. And that's basically our second page done. And so obviously once you do that, you're going to want a button so that you can navigate to the next page. So let's add that in. So let's add in sign in, because that's what we created. So I'm gonna ctrl+c, ctrl+v, so duplicate it and drag it across to the next frame. Try and align it, I guess, like when you're placing it. Otherwise, click and drag across everything on this page and then center align it. And that's looking awesome already. Cool. And there we go, that's our second screen done. What we also can build is the sign up screen, and that would be very similar to what this screen is. So we can go and select this frame, and the way that I do that is select iPhone 8-2 at the top, and we want to do ctrl+c, ctrl+v. And what we want to do here is now change welcome back to we're so excited to have you join us, ! And we probably want this to go over 2 lines so that it can be the same size as our username and password. Instead of entering a username, we want to set a username. It's going to double click and then double click again, and we'll change this text to set a username and set a password for the bottom as well. Click and drag across, or we can just click and then duplicate this again underneath, and this is going to be confirm password. Double click, con password. Awesome, and that's looking really great already. And then this button obviously is going to be a sign up, so I'm going to delete this. I've just pressed backspace on the keyboard. That works really nicely as a delete for me. And we're going to duplicate this sign up button and drag that onto this page. We want it to roughly sit at the same place that the sign in button is sitting on the previous page. And that's looking great. You can obviously add some color, bring this to life a little bit more, but we're just talking about layouts in this particular one. All right, so that's looking really, really good. And that's the basics of how to create an onboarding flow using Figma. I hope that was really helpful. There will be a video coming up really soon, which is prototyping, so how to bring this to life without having to code it up. So stay tuned for that. Let me know if you have any questions at all below.